All right, good morning, folks. First of all, let me thank you for attending our sixth annual Worldwide Public Sector Symposium for Government, Nonprofits, and Education Sector. I'll also want to start by apologizing for the delay in getting started. As you probably, if you attended the keynote, we ran a little longer, and that bumped up all of the sessions for this morning. Hopefully, we'll catch up as we move forward here. So my name is Sri Ilaprolu. I lead our solutions architecture practice, and I lead a team of solutions architects that address and cover and help government and education customers in US. So as you probably, if you went to the keynote, you saw the excitement that's associated with cloud computing and some of the innovation and new things that are being done in leveraging cloud. So what I'm going to be focusing on this session is some of the transformative innovation and new concepts that are being brought into education space, education market specifically, by leveraging cloud computing. So to help me with that, I have two of our education technology customer partners that are on stage here, both Instructure and Civitas Learning. So as we get further along, I'll hand over and let them go through and share some details as to what it is that they're doing on AWS, how are they leveraging AWS, and what are some innovative things that are coming out of their offerings. So without further ado, can we get the slides? All right, cool. So AWS has been focused on regional, local, and central/federal government space globally. We have been working with that customer set for a long time now, and at the moment we have over 1,700 organizations globally that are leveraging AWS in the government space. When it comes to education, we have 4,500 plus institutions around the globe leveraging AWS. And these institutions range from K-12 school districts, higher educational institutions, research organizations, medical schools, education technology companies such as Instructure and Civitas, and so on. And in the nonprofit world, we have 17,000 nonprofit organizations and non-governmental organizations that are leveraging AWS. And as you heard earlier in the keynote, the platform is evolving, and we're adding a lot more capability as we move forward. And some of these innovations are actually helping our customers leverage the platform and innovate on top of that. So they're able to create new and unimaginable solutions previously, at least, on top of the platform and iterate very quickly along with the feature set that we're adding to the platform. Looking at the education sector, this is a sliver of our customer portfolio that is in the education sector. We're supporting customers that are different forms of shape and sizes, different workloads that are operating on top of AWS. For example, higher educational institutions are running their mission-critical line of business applications on top of AWS. K-12 school districts are running their line of business applications as well. There are a number of SaaS offerings out of our education technology portfolio that are offered to education customers. When it comes to research and medical schools, we see a lot of high-performance computing and research-oriented workloads that are operating on top of AWS. One of the first questions that we get here, being in the public sector space, is cloud secure? Is it secure for my workloads and my data? And the answer there is absolutely. In terms of our number one priority at AWS is security. Nothing starts without security. So that is absolutely key. The platform itself is designed and is maintained in a way that it complies with regulations, standards, best practices, and some of the certifications and accreditations that we have been able to achieve and maintain over time are listed here. And these range wide industry segments. We have certifications that are pertinent to our financial industry customers, certifications that are more appropriate and relevant for federal and civilian and DoD customers, as well as a number of certifications for our international customers as well. And when it comes to education specifically, for example, I mentioned medical schools. We have HIPAA certification in the sense that we can comply with HIPAA workloads on top of AWS. And in US, there is a regulation called FERPA that deals and addresses student privacy and data sets. We've recently released a white paper that explains how customers can leverage AWS and comply with FERPA by taking advantage of some of the capabilities that we bring to bear. In addition to designing the systems and maintaining them in compliance with all of these regimes, we also create tools and functionality that customers can leverage. Some of those are listed here. CloudTrail, for example, captures every API call that's going to the platform on your behalf, and it's made available in a log that your security teams or your auditing teams can use to extract valuable information out of it. Similarly, AWS Config is a tool that manages and allows you to control any change that is happening in your environment. So it gives you a snapshot of before and after, and it'll let you control as to what those changes are. There's another tool that we recently released that's not mentioned here, or I should say feature that we recently released called VPC Flow Logs, which basically allows you to capture network level activity that's happening within your virtual private cloud, which is a logical section of the AWS cloud, and allows you to review at that data, use that data for analysis and any kind of auditing that you need to. One of the constant and regular feedback that we get from customers that we interact with, especially in the education and research community, is that it takes a long time to get going with any projects that they want to get going with. One of the constraints and blockers there is if I have an idea and I want to go try that, typically if I require hardware servers, it takes anywhere from weeks and in some cases months before I even get to that hardware. With AWS, that problem goes away significantly, in the sense that as soon as you have an idea, you're able to get going with it. Whether it's one server or 100 servers, you're able to launch and use that for the duration of your project. Once you're done, stop those servers, spin them down, and stop paying for them. That is a significant change in the way research has been done so far in the past using traditional models. Additional things such as being able to quickly spin up a dev environment on the other side of the coast if there is a need, or a test environment on the other side of the coast, spin up a 10,000 core or a 100,000 core if you need to, high performance computing cluster, run a simulation for, let's say, a week, and then once you're done, spin it down. That kind of capacity and agility is changing the game when it comes to research, and we're seeing a lot of research-oriented workloads moving on top of AWS. One of the key ingredients when it comes to innovation is experimentation, and lots of them. One of the main blockers for experimentation is if the experiment fails and there is significant collateral damage, it's not a good thing. And therefore, before anyone actually begins, there's a lot of hesitation and discouraging factors that are kicking in. So with AWS, because you pay for what you use and only when you use it, that problem is eliminated significantly. So as a result of that, more and more customers are able to experiment faster. More experiments are being done at a much, much lower cost, so overall experimentation is low. And this, in turn, is resulting in a wide range of innovative ideas. Things that were probably theoretical in the past are now becoming more of factual. And you saw earlier in the keynote that Teresa went through a set of customers that are considered startup businesses that would probably have never come into fruition unless they were using cloud computing. And getting it back to education use cases, we're seeing our education customers in the higher ed, education technology, K-12, and so on, leveraging AWS for pretty much every imaginable workload. The ones that are listed here are the most common workloads that we see. Easy to get started and easy to get going. Dev test systems are fairly obvious. You don't have to worry about having to provision and maintain an environment just for dev and test. Instead, if you need one, spin it up on AWS really quick, use it for the duration. When you're done, spin it down. Similarly, other line of business applications such as learning and course management systems, distance learning, MOOCs, massively online open courses, and more recently, virtual desktops in the cloud. BYOD, bring your own device, is becoming more prevalent nowadays. Using virtual desktops offering, Workspaces, which is an offering from AWS, university customers are able to expand that reach and let students bring whatever device that they want to and still access a desktop that's controlled, audited, and maintained by the school's policies. And the list goes on. So a number of use cases that customers are able to leverage AWS for. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to and invite our first guest speaker. He's a Senior Director of Global IT Shared Services at Instructure, Wade Billings, and ask him to come up and share some details about how Instructure is leveraging AWS.
Thank you, Sri. Is this on? Okay, it's on. So I'm just realizing that for the first time, seeing that written up, that's the most pretentious title I've ever had in my career. I probably should have thought about that when I made it up. So I want to thank you for coming out today and listening to my story and actually Instructure's story. And it's a story of definitely transformation and disruption. So the Instructure story starts in a classroom. It starts with two students at BYU who are taking a how to do a startup course at BYU. And the professor of this course, the instructor of this course, had recently sold his company off to EMC for a nice little profit and decided that he was going to go teach for a while. And as part of the curriculum of the course, he challenged his students to find the 5 or 6 technologies they use every day that just suck, and to go out and do better. Because he said in this way, you will have an idea that will resonate with people, you'll have an idea that will have an opportunity to disrupt and transform a market, and you also have an idea that will have a future to it. So Brian and Devlin, these are the students' names, decided that the technology that they were going to go transform was the learning management system. At the time, BYU was using 2 different learning management systems, and they were legacy systems, and they didn't talk to one another, and they were not open, and they were built on technology that was from the previous decade. And so they set about building their dream learning management system. Once they got to a point where they felt they had something to show, they got in a Geo Metro and without air conditioning and drove up and down the West Coast and spoke to anybody with an education that would speak to them. And that ranged from deans of colleges to provosts to college professors to student groups. And through this process, they found that their ideas about transforming and disrupting the learning management system were finding an audience. And so they came back, got back with their professor, who I think gave them a B+ on the project. And he said, you know what, I think you may have something here. And because he was a successful serial entrepreneur prior to becoming a professor, he took them around to a couple of different venture capitalists. And if anybody has ever sat in one of those meetings where you're trying to pitch your idea to a VC, you know that it is one of the most nerve-wracking, pressure-filled meetings you can ever be in. And at the end of the third one, where previously two VCs had said no, Josh, who was the professor, got up in exasperation and said, "I can't believe that you don't see the promise of this." And the guy said, "Well, if you believe in it so damn much, why don't you write them a check?" So he did. And he gave them their seed money. And at that point, Brian and Devlin had a very important decision to make. They could either take that money and invest it in infrastructure, or they could take that money and invest in their product. And at the time, Amazon Web Services was reaching a point where it was becoming kind of the de facto standard for cloud services. So they reached out to Amazon, got signed up for an account, and started putting their development and test environments on Amazon. At that time, they decided, what are we going to do? right? We're going to build this product. There's pent-up interest for it. But what is the mission of Instructure? And I think that's pretty succinct there, to make software that makes people smarter, right? And it's not just about higher education. It's not just about K-12. It's about lifelong learning, right? We just recently released a corporate learning and engagement product. So we really can take that student from kindergarten all the way up through college graduation and into the workforce and have a very consistent experience with our products. And also have the data there that is generated through that process. And so we get to know our students. And they found that, again, it's a market that's ripe for disruption. As you can see by this graph, Instructure is the only LMS company out there that's growing right now, right? We're taking share away from our competition, and we're not doing that through anything other than just being better and being more open and more available and more interactive. And these are some of our top logo company or organizations, and you can see that we're basically going up and to the right. That would not be possible if it wasn't for Amazon Web Services. I can absolutely say that with authority and conviction that if I was to go build the infrastructure it would take to power Instructure right now, I'd probably bankrupt the company. But because of the elasticity within Amazon and because of the ability for us to bring new resources to bear very quickly, we're able to power our business and provide a very consistent, very performant, very enjoyable experience for our customers and also for their users. We built our foundation on support, right? I mean, we're nothing if we're not able to support our customers both from an operational as well as from a use perspective. But on top of that, we're native cloud. From the very beginning, we were multi-tenant. We were on the cloud. We've never been a shrink-wrap piece of software. We've never been an on-prem piece of software. We're also open source, which is, I think, very interesting for us in that you can go download Canvas today. In fact, I run Canvas at home, building courses for my kids to teach them how to do dishes. They're failing. But we're able to get the Canvas out into the hands of people and instructors, even if they don't want to come and spend money with us. We're able to at least get them into the pipeline and knowing what Canvas is. The platform, I think, again, I can't say enough about the AWS platform. It's allowed us to scale the organization, scale the business along with our customers very seamlessly. And of course, if it's not easy to use, nobody's going to use it. So a lot of thought and work goes into making sure our product is what our customers want and need. So these are a couple of things that we found over the last couple of years is that, and this is usually where I throw the millennials under the bus, but that's who our customer base is, right? They want their technology personalized. They want there to be collaboration between them and their instructors and with other students. They want it to be highly mobile, right? They want to learn wherever they are, right? And on any device and anywhere and any time that they want to do it, right? My daughters grew up in the age of technology, right? Their phone never leaves their hand. And so they want to be able to interact with their professor or their students, or I'm sorry, their fellow students, utilizing that device. It needs to be always on. Again, if it's not up and not available, it's not useful. And so we need to have an infrastructure that ensures that we can maintain a very high level of availability and performance for our customers. The data that we collect, and we just announced recently a hosted data product, which Narajan will talk about more, and also what our partnership. But it's a way for organizations to take their data and analyze it and find out what's going on within their student body, and also what courses are effective, what courses aren't effective, what are students doing, and doing it in real time. So if little Bobby's having a problem with a quiz, the teacher can know right then that there's an issue, and he or she can address that with their student. And having a knowledgeable learner. I mean, the age of Google, anybody can find out anything about anything, right? And so we want to make sure that we're enabling our users and our students and our instructors to freely exchange ideas and information without putting artificial limitations on them because of software issues or platform issues. So again, a couple of then and now type of ideas. Used to be that legacy software was on-prem, was clunky, took 36 hours to update. That's a real true story. Now we're in the cloud, right, where I can push new features and new functions to our platform seamlessly, and I can do so without interruption. As I mentioned, the interfaces of some of our competition are kind of legacy. I'll be nice there. We try to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more friendly. In fact, we just wrapped up our user conference called InstructureCon last week. It's where we bring our customers to the mountains of Utah. I will describe it as Burning Man for teachers with slightly better bathroom facilities. But it's an opportunity for us to interact with our users and ask, hey, how's it going? What's going on? What would you like to see? And we just released a new user interface that was directly influenced by those types of interactions. And because we're a cloud-native platform, we can push that new interface out, and they can adopt it as they see fit. Right? We're not forcing our users into a dramatic change like that. The rest of this mobile I've already touched on. We try to be on every device that we can be. We have native clients for iOS and for Android. We have responsive interfaces so you can use the browser. And the last part, that's beyond me, but pricing, right? I'm not a sales guy, I'm an IT tech guy, but we try to be a little bit more flexible in our pricing. Pushing the wrong button there. So, Sri already mentioned that security is kind of at the core of Amazon Web Services. I want to kind of build on that. So everything I just talked about is great and wonderful, but if it's not secure and if there is a risk of data leaking out or getting into the wrong hands, and it's really kind of game over time. So we're kind of obsessed about security, right? In fact, this year we took a little bit more of an offensive approach to security. We went out and hired a company called BugCrowd, which has a crowdsourced security community of about 75,000 researchers throughout the world. And we're able to bring those researchers to bear on our application and our platform, and they are continually pounding us, right? So almost daily I get reports from BugCrowd, hey, something new was found, which allows us to address things very quickly in pre-production. So I'm not going to stand up here and say we are the most secure platform out there for fear of somebody going, challenge accepted. But I will say that, again, security is a very big focus for us. And, we're going through a couple of different certifications right now. So, in a few months, I hope to be able to say that we've achieved our SOC 2 Type 2 certification. But there's one thing up there I do want to really point out, and that is the middle two bullet points there. We're able to close critical issues in under 24 hours, right? So, for example, when Heartbleed came out last year, with the help from Amazon, we were able to close down our vulnerability around Heartbleed in about 12 hours. It's pretty good, right? When I went out and started looking at other sites, banking, other financial institutions, military, technology sites, they were still exposed to Heartbleed, days after the vulnerability was announced. So we were able to close that down very quickly. And again, I attribute that largely to the fact that we are a cloud-based company and we can make changes very rapidly. So, part of building out a cloud-based platform is you want to invite people in, right? You want to create an ecosystem that allows you to interact with different organizations without having to change your core code. And so we have a very rich API, and we also have built out a very rich ecosystem. So these are just some of the logos that we have inside of our Edu App Center. In fact, there are hundreds of integrations using the LTI standard that you can plug right into Canvas in a very secure and very interoperable way. So we're not having to go out and build new features necessarily in the product if the feature already exists in an LTI integration. We can just point our customers to that, and they go and hook it up to Canvas and start enjoying the benefits of that feature. So let's talk about technology for a second, right? So I don't think there's a service in the catalog of AWS that we don't use to one extent or another. These are the core services that we use for Canvas. For our corporate learning platform called Bridge, we're utilizing a few more that aren't up there. But we believe in the platform so much that we started building technology that plugs into Amazon. That vector scaling engine is a piece of software that we built in-house that allows us to predictively scale our infrastructure. So, back in February when we had our peak day at 216,000 concurrent users on the system at the same time, we were running 1,700 servers, and at that time, that peak lasted for about 30 minutes, and then as we came off the peak, we started winding servers down. And that was just a normal day for us, right? That we didn't run around with our hair on fire. Nobody was freaking out. We kind of looked at the user counter that we have on our NOC display and went, oh, wow, we hit a new peak. That's kind of cool. Okay, what about lunch? It just worked, right? So we didn't have to pre-plan for it. We didn't have to do anything special for it. It just worked. And again, if we were in a traditional self-hosted situation, that would be a very different day for us. A couple numbers to share real quick. Because of the way that the cloud is architected and our architecture on top of it, we're able to realize average page load time about 400 milliseconds. Our contracted SLA is 99.9%. The lawyers tell me that's the only number I can say publicly. I trust all of you. We're actually running 4 nines right now, right? And again, running 4 nines is kind of hard, especially given that it takes a lot of equipment, a lot of reliability to achieve 4 nines. Amazon allows us to have those resources available to us. And our mean time to repair right now on most issues is about 15 minutes. So when we do have issues, we're running a platform, it's not perfect. We're able to repair those issues very quickly, basically by, if a server's having a problem, instead of spending time repairing it, we just drop it and replace it. So we're able to basically make it cheaper for us to replace than it is to repair. And to wrap it up, again, we talked about transforming education in the cloud, utilizing the cloud to transform education. I think this slide really speaks to the effect that we're having out there, right? And these are just representative. There's quite a number more examples of this, but when we compare ourselves against our competition, and the Seattle Central Community College there on the left is kind of the poster child here. They spent 3 years on their legacy platform and only had a 3% adoption. After 18 months on Canvas, that was up to 20%, right? So that means that they were able to get their instructors and they were able to get their students migrated onto Canvas from their legacy platform, and not only maintained but increased the adoption there. And as you can see, there, others follow suit. You got River University and Michigan Tech that both have very high adoption rates within a very short amount of time. So again, just to bring things home, I firmly believe that if we were on a traditional self-hosted or managed-hosted type of situation, those kind of success stories would not be achievable in the amount of time that they're achieved. I attribute that both to a fact that we have a product that is very usable, very performant, and very flexible, and a platform on Amazon that allows us to service our customers wherever they are and provide them with the features very quickly and react to changing conditions for them in a very expedient manner. So I'm Wade Billings. That's my time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wade. So next up, I would like to invite Niranjan Nagar. He's the Chief Technology Officer for Civitas Learning, and he's going to be talking about the predictive analytics capability that Civitas has built on top of AWS.
Thanks, Sri. I guess I'm keeping you all from lunch, so I have to be fast because we're running behind. How many of you are from higher education here? Great, awesome. Good to know. And the rest, are you all in the technology side, like on the IT side? Great. So I'm going to talk about two stories. My personal story a little bit, and then also that of Civitas, which is more important, and I want to talk about that as well. I was fortunate enough in my career to have been early part of two startups, one that built Rhapsody, which is a music subscription service. And the first time that I was part of that founding team and we were thinking about building software that was going to be a SaaS software, clearly there was no Amazon Web Services in 1999, so we decided that we're going to have to go find data centers. I managed a team that was engineering and operations, which included 3 data centers across the country. And it was a nightmare because I had to deal with buying hardware and all of that. The second time I went down the startup route, there was managed hosting, so that clearly took away my frustration in dealing with hardware vendors and buying stuff, but I still had to manage for peak. And of course, now all I have to do is to go on a computer and say I need 10 more instances of Redshift, and I have it. So it's an amazing opportunity for going into the cloud and managing services. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Civitas. So Civitas was started about 3 years ago. And the mission of the company, as many of you know, higher education institutions are obviously focused on student outcomes, and we are helping them be data-driven. So we're a predictive analytics-based solutions that are driven into the higher education institution, where they're able to make decisions based on data on how to improve those student outcomes, whether it's retention, graduation, course success, any of those. And it's just happenstance that we happen to be together here with Instructure. We announced a partnership last week with them at InstructureCon on how the two companies can work together. And I think it's an important aspect. As many of you are going to work with multiple vendors, it's important for you to leverage the benefit of all of these vendors and amplify them if they are working together. And it's much more important in a cloud situation than it is when you have an on-prem situation where you have access to most of the data. So Civitas is a predictive analytics solution. Our focus as a company, our mission is to help 1 million more students learn well and finish strong every year. And it's clearly a data-driven mission. We have a number associated with it. And so we have to make sure, as we are working towards it, that we're able to track that. And of course, the one way that we can make that data-driven is to make the most out of the learning data that's available. As many of you know, coming from higher education institution or any institution that has operated multiple services, there's a lot of data across multiple systems. So the important thing for analyzing anything from an outcome perspective is to make sure that you bring the data together, right? You don't want to have data about learning management system in one place and your ERP system in another place, a CRM system data in third place, and try to figure out exactly who touched a student across all of these places, right? And Civitas, one of the big things that we do is to bring together various data sources from multiple services that you may be running in a seamless manner, so then we can apply our predictive analytics modeling to that combined data set. So you get a holistic view about your student and the services that they're being exposed to. We also understand really well that every institution has at least a few, if not, I think there are quite a few of them, that are decisions and policies that are unique to that institution. So in all of the work that we do, we understand that there's only so much that you can do with best practices. What are all the community colleges doing, and let me see how that applies to me. There is definitely enough unique kind of policies and procedures that are part of the institution and decisions that are unique that you want to kind of harness that. So we tease those unique outcomes and then see how they're impacting unique actually predictors, if you will, that are impacting your outcome. So we do that a lot. So it's a very institution-focused product. And it's also, at Civitas, the name is community. And so our goal is to not only be something where we deliver a solution for one institution, but we also bring them together and say, how can we learn from each other? So every quarter, we actually bring all of our partners together, and we share what we have learned in the past quarter with them, what our plans are and where we're doing, and we also help them kind of communicate with each other and collaborate. So that's kind of what we do there as well. Some of our partner institutions, many of them who are public four-year, private colleges, and community colleges across the country. So we've been very, very fortunate to be working with a lot of them who have worked, and we call them, some of them are pioneer institutions. They have kind of hacked their way with us as we learned what is the best solution to bring forward. And so we're very happy to be working with a lot of them. So I'll briefly touch on our solution very quickly, but focus on why it's important for you to be thinking about some of these concepts that I'm going to talk about as you think about cloud-based solutions. As I said, we are a predictive analytics-based solution. We have a platform that brings together all of the data sources, disparate data sources, into one kind of unified model. And then we have products that are delivered to various constituents across the institution. For the institutional leadership, we have a product called Vloom that they can use to kind of look at how certain outcomes are being driven by the decisions that they're making. So we can show them, for instance, persistence. How was your persistence term over term, and what is your persistence predicted to be for the next term, so you can get ahead of the problem as opposed to looking at it historically. And you can see various predictors of that success, so you can segment groups of students together and see how certain factors impact one group more than another and make decisions that way. Things like financial aid. Who do you allocate financial aid to? How is that impacting their ability to persist? Their usage of LMS and how active they are versus the grades that they have scored. Where do they tip over and cross each other? So there's a lot of work that's being done there. We also have a product called Inspire that is targeted for the advisor. That's an early alert kind of product. Essentially, looking at various factors that come in on a day-to-day basis and making a prediction based on their risk scores, if you will. Who is a student that has changed their risk profile that an advisor wants to reach out to? We also have a product called Inspire that is driven for the faculty. And it gives a sense of engagement for the faculty from day one, and see how that engagement changes and who are the students that they should probably focus on a little more. Gives you a nice heat map, kind of seeing not the scores, not the grades, not our prediction on whether or not they'll succeed in the course, because we don't want to have things gamified, if you will. It's about how engaged are the students and what can you do to influence that engagement, more on the positive outcome. We also have a student-based product that also goes to the advisor that helps them plan for their degrees. Many of them come in undeclared, and how do you know what you want to do, and how can you plan for that? How is it personalized to you? If you're looking for a job, and you're an economics major, and you're 45% into that economics major, but if you switch over to an accounting major, maybe you're 54% into the accounting major, here's how much tuition that you need to kind of spend in order to get that degree, and here's the job opportunity that's available to you, so you can make an objective decision based on that. So all of this is operated on the cloud, and again, as I said earlier, it's based on a platform that we build that brings all of this together. And it's important that we get data from all of these sources, and so that's kind of how it's built. I'm going to quickly jump through the next one, which is how do we work with the institution? So let's say you're an institution that wants to work with Civitas. You now have the responsibility working with us to give us that data so that we can actually build those models for you. And that's currently the responsibility of the institution and us jointly to get that data, if it's an on-prem hosted kind of software. So if it's an SIS, then you're basically taking the data out of that or giving us access to that system, and then we're securely getting that data into our system and then unifying it and getting the work done. Now, if you are one of those institutions that move to Amazon, let's say, now you don't have to do some part of that work because of all the security and encryption that's built into the cloud, that all you need to make sure is to make that data access available to us. And then we are also hosted on Amazon, and using some of the security mechanism and encryption built into the S3 service, we can easily transfer that without you having to do the work to kind of push that data file over to us. On the other hand, if you work with partners like Instructure, and this is really where it's important as you have multiple vendors working on the cloud, that they now have the ability, like Civitas and Instructure announced last week, to work together where you can say, Instructure, hey, Civitas is one of our partner, and they're adding value to what we do. How about you give the our data directly to them? So you now don't have to worry about any of that. That securely, between the two institutions that you are already working with, that you get this data. So as you start to kind of think about your own move to the cloud, understand the benefit that it brings to you in taking some of your responsibility away and not have to worry about that. And then if you also work with vendors who are themselves partners with each other, then that adds to the benefit. It amplifies the value of your investment across multiple vendors. And Amazon is helping us do that. By the way, as far as that's the key proposition here is that speed to value. What you're trying to do with multiple vendors at the end of the day is make sure that these solutions work in harmony and kind of provide the value for your institution. And working with partners who are cloud-based that are partners with each other helps speed up that value, right? So that's what we do. Happy to share more details about our product itself if you're curious. But you can learn more at civitaslearningspace.com. So you can come check us out, see some of our partner stories and success stories. As far as technology is concerned, Amazon has been extremely helpful in the past year that I've been working directly with them. I've been in the company for a year now. With support for Redshift, we use a lot of Redshift. We use EC2s. We use the EMR clusters that are there. So we do a lot of work on the cloud, and working with them has been a pleasure. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to take questions if we have the time. Otherwise, enjoy the lunch.
So we have a few more minutes if you guys have any questions. We're up here. Yep.
I have a question on Civitas. When you get the data from so many different sources and putting it together, specifically when you're getting a student data and someone is doing a typo and not putting the data correctly, how do you actually do the matching of student data?
Well, that's a lot of that is what we do. That's our core technology proposition. When you bring data together from disparate sources, it's not just the names. You have to be careful about the types that they use. How do you recognize a full-time student from a part-time student? Suddenly, if there is a gender column that comes to us, does it have 2 values or 5 values? What do they mean? Did it change? So you got to kind of figure that's part of our core value proposition in terms of how we recognize the change in the data and how we prepare ourselves for it. But yes, we do that work. We're not right now. We're exploring it. We've kind of built our own ETL tool and we're working on it.
But following on his question, your model then is fed back with the results and the quality of the predictions and refined over time. You get raw data from school, and then you build your analytical model matching stuff, but the data ranges are different, the names of the attributes are different. You start doing the correlations. What I'm trying to say is the predicted models for the success of the student evolve across time, right?
It does. I mean, because nothing is static. Like a policy changes, you may change. The whole point of our platform is to find the efficacy of each of your, policies that you're doing towards student outcome, changing student outcome, right? There's a lot of initiatives that institutions have for driving student success. How do you know which one is working? And how do you know the dosage effect of each one of them so that you can independently assess if there is an ROI? So it does change as you change the decision. So we recompute that when there's a new outcome. For example, every term, when a new outcome comes in, there's a new model that we kind of run on top of that. We retrain the model, and then we move forward. So yes, there is a constant retraining that happens, and that retraining is triggered by when we start to see the efficacy of that model, shifting downwards. In every display, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, there was a ROC curve that you saw, so that we constantly tell our user how strong are our predictions. And so you can, as soon as that lowers by a certain percentage point, that triggers the retrain for us. Does that explain your question? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you getting any pushback from the students? Just imagine you have students in yellow color, green color, like a successful one, red color. Well, that's my performance in the red. This past semester, I decided to change. However, my path dependency may impact, say, my faculty, grade, attitude, and all of that. For that reason, this path signaling might be somewhat in conflict with my
Current
semester intentions, plans, and all of that.
That's a very good question. Actually, we don't look at your past and try to make a prediction. We're looking at how students have performed in that class and looking at you as a student and looking at your engagement. Again, we're not talking about your grades. We're not talking about your ability to score like an A, B, or a C, because you don't want that to be impacting the faculty to say, well, this student doesn't look like he's going to pass my class. How about I encourage that student to drop out? The heat map that you saw was a heat map about engagement. How active are they in the LMS? Have they been changing that activity? Have they increased that activity or decreased the activity? What might be the reason? So oftentimes what we see is that someone who is highly engaged, the interesting thing is not about the heat map as much as when you correlate that to how well they're doing in the course. If you see someone who is highly engaged but are not doing as well in the course, that's someone that you have really a ability to impact and make them better. Right? You may also see people who are not as engaged but are doing well. If you just help them increase their engagement, maybe they'll help their peers. So there's a lot of positive focus on engagement, not just the outcome. So for the faculty app, we're focused on engagement. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
But that's a good one, though.
Any others? All right. Thank you, guys.